been recommended that a motion be made that student number 052113, as identified in the student's file, kept in the superintendent's office, be expelled for the remainder of the 2012-13 school year and the entire 2013-14 school year and be placed in an alternative education setting. Under motion?
So.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cohen Barnes,
Yes.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Vicki Hernan Favor,
Yes.
Mary Hess,
Yes.
Tom Mattia,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Tracy White.
Yes.
Okay, tonight we have recognition of some of our Clinton Rosette Middle School students. Anon Kyrub, Grab, Bryce, okay, we already met Bryce, and Stephanie Vasquez. The Board of Education will recognize 7th grade students, Anon Grab, I'm sorry, Bryce Comer and Stephanie Vasquez for winning first place in the E-Cyber Mission National Science Compensation this year for the state of Illinois. This competition challenges students across the country to make their communities better places. The group designed pocket wind energy generators. They designed and tested different fan blades to see what size blade would be most efficient at generating electricity. Their hope was that one day you could recharge small things like cell phones with energy from the wind. Each of these students will receive a $1,000 savings bond for their efforts. The group sponsor is Kelly Hillington. Kelly's here with us tonight. So on behalf of the board, please accept our congratulations. Kelly, if you would introduce and have the students come forward, please.
I also have, I just received in the mail their certificates from the E-Cyber Mission competition. And so these are, students aren't even mine. I had them all last year. But this year they came to me and asked if I would help them put together another entry for this competition. And so they won first place in the state of Illinois, which was so exciting. So I'm so excited for them and so happy for them. I wish we'd gotten to go to Washington, D.C., but I'll take first place in the state. So that was fantastic. So come on down and get your Stephanie and Bryce. Or we're missing Anon today. But
Okay. Bryce? Stephanie? I have the wrong one here.
oh, and Anon just made it.
Great job.
Sorry. Thank you.
You know, just a normal weekend for them. Stephanie, you're in the orchestra at CRMS, right? The normal weekend for these guys, they do this, and then they go to the orchestra competition at Johnsburg and get the highest rating possible through the Clinton Rosette Middle School Orchestra.
And they were so darn busy with all their clubs that we had to meet on Friday nights after school because that was the only way they could fit me into their schedule. So.
We want to thank you, and do anything you want to make a few comments? Was it a fun experience?
Yeah. Well, they were a bit annoying.
Let's hear it for them again. Thank you.
Being on time, Anon, I noticed you were late for the orchestra bus too Saturday morning.
Okay, next we're going to have a presentation from our Senior Business Leadership Academy. This is not on the agenda, but their teacher, Mr. Griffith, the leader of this group, has 4 of the students from DeKalb High School here tonight. We have Courtney Patrick, Christian Bolte, Nick Savage, and Maggie Mead. And Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you for a small presentation.
Well, thank you. I'll let you guys get positioned. And if you ask these students any questions and they don't want to respond, that could be a problem. But thank you very much, Mr. Matee and board members and Dr. Briscoe. Kishwaukee Education Consortium, for those board members that may not be familiar with us.
Bruce, I'm going to have you kind of turn sideways so the audience can hear as well.
I need to have my back to you. Kishwaukee Education Consortium with 18 different programs, whether it be auto, collision, diesel, manufacturing, engineering, computer repair, Cisco systems, or fire science, or culinary, or graphics, or cosmetology, or welding, or aviation, or building trades. One of those programs, we added our Senior Business Leadership Academy to it. Last year was a pilot program with the Sycamore School System, and this year we were fortunate for DeKalb to participate as well as Rochelle. So when I had 10 students from DeKalb, I had 12 students from Sycamore, 10 students from Rochelle, and I'll let them tell you about the Senior Business Leadership Academy. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Boki, and we'll see.
And if I could have all of you kind of turn sideways so we can hear you and the audience can hear you as well. Kristen?
Yeah, so we were really fortunate to have this program this year. It's the first time DeKalb's had this Senior Business Leadership Academy, and it's just really neat because we get to kind of see all the different aspects of what business is. So we had 3 main components, and one of them was the Business 106 class we took, and then the Business 101 class we took, and then we also got to do shadowing as part of it. So I can talk a little bit about the Business 106, and then we'll hear from some of the other students a little bit about the other components. So the Business 106 was really getting out into the community, and a big emphasis on the networking and learning how to talk with people and really branch out, because I think one thing Bruce would say a lot is, Mr. Griffith, is it's not about who you are, it's about who you know, and that's so true. But so that was really cool, and we every Wednesday we had early release, so we would go and meet with someone from the community, and we would see insurance people and attorneys and see people that deal with stocks and just all this kind of different areas, banks, and so it was really cool to just learn about different jobs and to spark interest in some of us and see which jobs we have an interest in, which ones we don't. And also it was really cool because you get to see really how it fits together. Like the first meeting we went to was with Mr. McMahon, who is doing the project with the reception hall. And we actually got to see his plan. So to see the workings of how a business is put together, and then be able to go to the attorney's office and just see all these different components fit into a business plan was really cool for us. So yeah, and I'll hand it over to Nick or Courtney now, who's going to talk about the Business 101 class we took.
Okay. All of the students took Business 101. It's an online class that's supported through KISH or KDC, and every week we have a new chapter. And our books, they were about this thick. They had about 20 or so chapters that we did, and chapters included things like ethics, entrepreneurship, types of businesses, accounting principles, and things of that nature. Every Sunday is when I would do it, because I would have like a lot of stuff going on, like basketball and other stuff. And it would be really convenient for me because I did have a lot of stuff going on, and it took 3 hours to get it done and be nice, because we could just take a test and take the assignments, and then we were all done. We would go to the KEC webpage and go to Blackboard, which is a little icon in the corner, to go to all of our assessments, and then we would go to another link through that to all of our assignments, and it was really nice because it was just really fun to go through.
And how many college credit hours did you get for 106?
We got
2. How many do you get for 101?
3.
3, so these students got 5 hours of college credit at no expense. The online one was a challenge, I will admit, for these students, because they're very busy students. Their assignments were due at midnight on Monday night. Tammy Tickler instructed that from Kishwaukee College, and these kids did a great job. And just to correct Kristen, which I don't do very often, but for what she said, I said, it is what you know and who knows you. So it's very important. It is what you know and who knows you. And these students did.
Okay, Bruce, we're going to get back to that.
I would just love to be able to do that to Bruce for a long time.
We have a 2.5
I would write this day down on my calendar.
We have a 2.5 hour presentation. Kristen, back to you.
Yeah, Nick's gonna tell us about the shadowing portion of the class.
All right, so next year I'm going to be majoring in nursing at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I'm unlike those ladies over there. I'm not really as much into the business side of this class, but this class was still a real great experience for me because shadowing was also a major part of it. And you know, a medical field isn't really the area of study. You want to go through all the book work and then get into the hospital setting and realize that this isn't for you. And although Bruce wasn't exactly able to get me into the hospital, he got me into the nursing lab over at NIU. And that was a really cool experience for me because if you're not familiar with the nursing lab at NIU, it's essentially a mock hospital setting. And there's mannequins there, and the students are able to perform procedures on the mannequins. And the instructors are able to have these mannequins act and react as a real patient would. So it really trains you for what you're going to be experiencing when you're in the hospital setting. And I was able to sit with the instructors and actually watch these students perform these actions and get practice, and then go back with the students and debrief on what they did, and you just get a real cool experience out of it. And at the end of it, Miss Kristen Selig, who was the lady nice enough to let me come into her lab and shadow with them, asked me if I was scared for next year seeing what they put their students through. And I told her that actually I was really excited for next year now, because sitting there with the instructors, seeing those students perform those operations and do the things they were doing, I got excited and I wanted to go in there and be a part of it too. And it really just, this shadowing in this class affirmed for me that I'm making the right choice, majoring in nursing and going on to be a nurse in the rest of my life. And I know that without this opportunity, I may not have made that decision and gone down the wrong path. So I just like to thank Bruce. This class really helped me realize that this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it was really neat to be able to like see what you want your future to be and really have things affirmed for you and have things realize that's not what you want to do. I know I went in thinking I wanted to be an accountant and realized I didn't want to by the end, and not because it's not a good, my dad's an accountant, but I just saw there are other things that I saw when we went to different places and just things I never even knew about that I was so interested in. So it was really cool to be able to get a step ahead and really just experience things that high schoolers don't get to a lot. So we're really thankful for this experience. And then Maggie's going to talk a little bit about her experience.
Next year, I'm going to the it's not next year, it's this fall. I'm going to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, majoring in accounting. And I had an excellent opportunity to job shadow with Sheila Johnson at Ideal Industry, and I learned a lot more about accounting. I learned like the responsibility of to be an accountant and like how the typical day for accountant is. And after like this job shadowing, I'm looking forward to majoring in accounting.
Yeah. So, and we wanted to open it up to questions at the end. So.
Board members, questions? Courtney and Christian, you didn't tell us your post-high school plans.
Oh yeah, I'm going to Hope College in Michigan, and don't know what I'm doing major quite yet, but I think business communications kind of thing. So.
I'm going to Dayton University in Ohio and majoring in accounting.
Questions?
Just a comment. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to talk to the three teams, and what Bruce is doing is fantastic because the experience that these kids get to be able to actually see the real world jobs that they describe is phenomenal. But also just from a community member and a business person in the community, feel engaged with the youth of our community. It was such a rewarding experience. I mean, when you're talking and sharing and listening to questions that they have, you can't but get fired up and excited about what's going on in our school. So it was just a great experience, and I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. Bruce ever walks into this school district and wants to pull off an initiative, I mean, the answer is just yes.
This class was an excellent opportunity for us to get out of just like the daily grind of sitting behind a desk for 6 hours a day. It was a great chance for us to go out into the community, to meet members of the community, and have opportunities that we wouldn't have been able to do just sitting behind a desk every day. Because when we get out into the real world, most of us aren't just going to be sitting behind a desk all day. We're going to be out interacting with people, meeting new people. So this was a great opportunity to prepare us for our future.
Tracy?
I just want to tell you guys, well done, number one. Number two, we will say yes to Bruce Griffiths when he comes back and asks for initiatives, but it's because he knows the right people.
They know the right people.
I think I know the answer to this, but is this a program that you would recommend to the students next year? And Nikki, would you recommend that DeKalb High School continue this program?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, I just want to say thank you to Bruce and for your excellent work on this, and for all of your students. We couldn't be prouder of you. One of the initiatives that we want to do, and we're doing it through different measures, but this is continuing with that, is to integrate our school system with our local businesses. So hopefully, maybe some of you will decide to come back to DeKalb someday, maybe make your business here in DeKalb someday. You're our future, and I know when talking to businesses, they want to participate in this because they want to see what's kind of coming down the pipe, and it's a win-win for both groups. And so thank you for giving this really serious work and representing DeKalb District 428 so well. So I know the board members like to congratulate you, and thank you very much.
Great job. That's awesome. Good luck to you. Good luck.
Okay, I'll give you your diploma now in a couple weeks. Glad I earned it.
Good luck there.
Congratulations, good luck.
My
Great choice. Oh,
yeah. You were born.
I was an engineer.
Thank you. What?
Okay.
I told Maggie that I think they will definitely get their diplomas now in 2 weeks. Okay, next is acceptance of gifts and donations. It's been recommended that the Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of 2 checks for Gordon Kreschek, each for $1,000, which represents his contribution to a DeKalb High School scholarship fund and recognizes senior student athletes and honors his daughter Carrie's memory. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we take that with great appreciation. We now have it open for public comment. Vicki, do we have any cards?
I don't.
Okay, no cards tonight. We'll move on to board committee reports and correspondence. Updates?
Technology Committee, we met earlier this week, I think it was Monday. Just continue to say I'm always inspired by getting around our faculty and seeing the motivation that they have to try and figure out the best way possible to deliver the best instruction to our youth. I mean, it's phenomenal. What's going on in the Technology Committee and the presentation that will start coming before the board, especially on the 17th, what we're looking at engaging on is going to be a real game changer for the district and the way we deliver content instruction. A lot of work's going into it right now. We still have a lot more work to do. But as we've mentioned before, we've gone through at Apple. There's been teams that have gone to other schools and have implemented one-to-one technology and device in every student's hands, and really starting to look at the broader impact of doing this as well beyond the technology committee at this point, and getting more of the curriculum committee involved, getting more of our staff involved. But it's going to take a lot of effort from the board's perspective, and especially from admin's perspective, planning this out in the coming years, budgeting out what's necessary. But again, the results that we keep hearing about from other schools, the return on investment from student achievement would be absolutely incredible if we implement this correctly. And I love the direction we're going at, where so much focus and conversation right now is regarding the professional development piece. How are we going to make sure that our staff are as educated as possible in making this as successful as possible? But it's exciting to be a part of. We still have a lot more work to do, but I'm going to be looking forward to sharing what I can with you. And if you have any questions outside of administration, feel free to call me, and I'd be happy to elaborate on more things we're doing and what some of the future may look like.
I think we are planning on having a special board meeting.
17th.
Monday, June 7th.
Monday, June 17th, which will be a joint meeting between the Board of Education and the Technology Committee. So there'll be a lot more data coming down the pipe. I think I want to thank our board for agreeing again to participate on the various committees that we have. And for people that think that we just come to a board meeting once or twice a month, most of our board members, all of our board members have agreed to serve on various committees. So tonight I'm distributing a piece of paper and board committees to sign up for either FFAC, Curriculum Council, DeKalb Education Foundation, our District Insurance Committee, Multicultural Committee, the NIU Partnership Governing Board, the Safety and Security Committee, Technology Committee, and an IASB Governing Board representative. So lots of time is put in, and so if you can just, we'll send you an electronic copy of this as well. And you just send me back your choices, and we will arm wrestle over which ones to take. Tracy.
This is, first the FFAC will speak for itself. I'm on that committee and you're about to get plenty of that. But as an unofficial committee, I just want to let you guys know that Dr. Briscoe, Dr. Muller, and myself continued our unofficial PR tour, I guess you'd call it, through some of the realtors in town. And we're out trying to promote the recent results that not only came from U.S. News, but others, through state report cards and other things. And we're trying desperately hard to get people to truly understand what's going on in District 428, other than what they may have heard somewhere. The most interesting comment was from a woman this morning, a Caldwell banker. I think she said she lived in DuPage, correct? She sold in DuPage. And even in DuPage County, the perception was that this was not the school district to come to, and she was thrilled to have the information. So we're going to keep whittling. It's nothing but good to be out there, because they clearly live and work here, many of them, and they hadn't been paying attention. So we're plugging.
Any thoughts on expanding to some people at NIU or the hospital?
Absolutely. Oh, we're just
Fantastic.
going to keep booking stuff.
And I think people have been very receptive to it.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Very good. Very positive. One other thing on board committee reports and board assignments. The board has again agreed to an unofficial policy of adopting a school. And so I'll be collecting from all the school board members their choices, and then we'll try to have those go out. And what we have passed is that we get regular reports on each of the schools from your adopted school. So that'll, I think, not to increase any burden of communication on the principals. This is the board's responsibility to reach out to you and learn about what's going on in your school. Okay. Very good. All right, we'll move on to our presentations. We do have a presentation that summarizes a lot of work that's been done by the subcommittee, the FFAC subcommittee, which is to plan and prioritize speech and facility needs. We have three presenters this evening, Andrea Royal, and Tammy Carson, and Carrie Malott. Carrie is a volunteer member of our Finance and Facilities Advisory Committee. So I will turn it over to you folks.
And actually, Carrie's going to do the presentation this evening, but as a subcommittee from the FFAC, we met numerous times in the last few months to take a look at all of our buildings, and a large part of our charge was to see how we could build purity amongst all our buildings. We went out and did some site visits and had some very interesting conversation, and I think Carrie summed it up beautifully in the presentation she was about to share with you this evening.
And this is an information item only.
It is.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for work and for the opportunity to present on behalf of the FFAC and the subcommittee this presentation on facility parity. We did meet, as Andrea said, about 4 times over a couple of months. And then we took tours of buildings on 3 different days, couple 3 hours a day. We had to familiarize ourselves with what we could see and do about parity in those particular buildings. So as you see on the first slide, we were supposed to identify these parity issues across the district facilities in view of the fact that we do have $21 million to work with because of the state construction grant. And we went out there to see what we could find, and you'll see what we found. Tammy is obviously running the slides back there, and we'll refer back to Tammy probably more than once during the presentation here as the head of the Facility Operations Department. She was more than helpful with presenting to us as the subcommittee, which she is on with Andrea, cost issues and estimates, which we greatly needed. All right, so dictionary definition of what is parity. Well, I put up several different ones there that I pulled from different dictionaries, and I like the bottom one, functional equivalence. Can we always be exactly equal? Probably not, but we can be functionally equivalent. So what level, as the committee got together and met at first to define what our task was and how we go about it, we said, well, there's probably different levels of parity. And so I put it together for the slideshow as 3 different potential levels. Different people think differently, but first of all, foundational, and that would probably be safe neighborhood schools. When parents look in a community, whether they want to join the community, as was just mentioned about your work with the realtors in the area, they want to know that they can go to a school that's good, and it's safe, and hopefully it's in their neighborhood. So that's a foundational level of parity as we saw it in the subcommittee. Secondly, essential parity. You need an environment that's suitable to learning. If you go to school and it's 20 degrees below zero in there, you're not going to learn much. There's a lot of things, we've heard about art on a cart. Some schools have that. Some schools have a room for art. There are various kinds of essential conditions that are necessary for good learning. And then finally, I think the ultimate level of physical or facility parity is something that becomes harmonious, where you have essentially the same thing. Back to the previous slide of the functional equivalence across the district. That's what we'd really like to achieve in the long run. This presentation tonight is essentially going to concentrate on the center one there. This essential environment suitable learning part will also spill over into both foundational and harmonious. You don't necessarily start with foundational and then go to essential and then go to harmonious. You might think that's how it works, but in fact, you can touch on all 3 of those, and we'll be doing a little bit of each, but most of it probably will be in the essential area. Okay. So the process that we used as a subcommittee was to first look at all the facilities on paper. What do we have out there? How many buildings? What schools? And so on. What is the physical plan for District 428? We then looked at the buildings that have not been recently improved in some way. And so that set aside a group of school buildings that we decided had recently been renovated, added on to, in some way improved in a fairly significant way. And we said, all right, we only have so many dollars. Let's look at the ones that haven't been touched. So then we spent 3 days going out to those various buildings and looked around, trying to keep blinders on in a sense, as to not look at custodial issues. Some of the issues that really don't necessarily have to do with parity. I suppose custodial issues, if you didn't clean the place, could become a parity issue. But in fact, we found across the district and all the buildings we looked at, they did a great job of keeping up what we have. So with those blinders on, to just try and see something that really had something to do with true parity from a physical plant perspective. We then sat down at meetings after that those tours, and began to assess our observations. What did we find? And so we built a list, probably more than one list actually, and then whittled it down. Are these really parity items? Yes, okay, stays on the list. And then we came to consensus after a little bit of time on what are the highest priority projects. Once again, understanding that we don't have tremendous funds to work with, but something, let's go ahead and see if we can get consensus. And so we did on a number of high priority projects. And then with the help of the Tammy's department and the architects that they work with, listed some approximate costs and added it all up. Okay, so these are the buildings that we went to look at, starting with Tyler. And these, by the way, throughout the whole presentation, each slide is arranged with pretty much top priority at the top of the slide. You could probably argue when it gets down toward the bottom of the list on each slide, but the first several are usually the ones that we thought were the highest priority. And all of them are the ones we thought, you'll see an individual slide for each one of these, we thought we could actually do something with the amount of money that we have. So first Tyler, Littlejohn, Jefferson, Lincoln, Malta, Clinton, Rosette, and then we put Cheeseboro on here. There is, in fact, as you know, a separate subcommittee, and I understand from the agenda that will be on discussion at least tonight. A separate subcommittee headed up the task of what to do with Cheeseboro, which is right now closed. And we put it on our presentation and our discussion because it has an impact, a potential impact on some of the things that we'll recommend. So keep that in mind as we go on. At Tyler, when we got to Tyler, we were kind of taken aback. All of the other schools had significant items of disparity with respect to the plant or facility, but when we got to Tyler, wow, I mean, we really need to do some work there, we thought. And if you haven't been to Tyler, and for the audience, Tyler is an open floor plan building. There are essentially no walls or half walls throughout the building, and wow, you almost have to go there. It's one of those things where you could look at it on paper and not get the same sense that you would if you went there and saw it. So we went to Tyler and said, we've got to do something with Tyler. So that certainly will be our top recommendation, to start with Tyler and to replace that open floor plan with some doors and walls. And then Tyler also happens to be one of the buildings that has no secured entrance at present. So that certainly is a top priority item. Also, remove the mobile classroom unit if at all possible. You'll see this on a couple other slides. This board, well, with the new members, I don't know where this board will sit exactly on that issue yet, but I can remember from having been in board meetings, at least the last two boards have mentioned wanting to remove those mobile classroom units and get the kids into a more secure and much better, even as of yesterday, the weather. Obviously, you'd much rather have children in a more secure building, secure in many ways. So that is a really big item for us as a subcommittee in the FFAC to try and remove those mobile classroom units. So the estimated total construction grant cost at Tyler would be about $2 million. This is based on the architect's work looking at it, Tammy discussing with them, and because the building is essentially a good building, and because it apparently has a free span construction technique, they can go in there and they can put some walls, doors, and so on in there and create actual classrooms for about $2 million. So that's our recommendation for Tyler at this point. Okay, so let's go to Littlejohn now. Littlejohn also needs a new entrance, a secured entrance, and as you know, you've approved for bid, and now in fact the bids have come back, and that's on the agenda for tonight. For that secured entrance, that will be a great improvement to Littlejohn. We also found at Littlejohn that there is some classroom and hall lighting that's substandard. On a bright day, probably all right in there, but when it's not so bright, well, you need some more lighting. So that's certainly one of the things that we thought could be worked on at Littlejohn very soon, as well as a secured entrance. So the total cost for those things, then again, $550,000 approximately.
Can I just add?
Yes.
Very sorry, Mark, but just want to remind as you go, as Kerry goes through this, he's including costs the boards have approved for the security entrance.
Yes.
For each school.
You'll
That's
see
included in the cost.
Yeah, on the final slide, you'll see there was $800,000 that was approved bids to go out. The bids have come back, they've been opened. It is in that range, you'll see. And so, yeah, these dollar amounts in the final slide you'll understand better will include that amount. Okay, so at Jefferson, again, another secured entrance, and there's some flooring problems that need to be fixed there. But that comes out of the operations and maintenance budget. Okay, not out of this $21 million grant budget. One of the things we found at Jefferson is that there's a very dangerous situation there, and we would recommend to install a safe parent drop-off lane. There's enough room to do it on the grounds there. Presently, the kids are, some of the parents drop the kids off on Ridge, right? And,
Correct.
Yeah, Ridge Road. Oh, hi, Chris.
Hi.
I didn't see you sitting there. Principal from Jefferson. So, yeah, that is a real issue. In fact, if you go down Ridge sometimes, slow down when you get in the vicinity of the school. And if you go slow enough, you'll see the sidewalk that goes right between two houses. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I didn't see it until I slowed down enough to see it. But kids get dropped off on Ridge Road, which now is a very busy road. It used to be so busy, but it is now, and so that's an issue. We don't want those kids getting out and into that traffic, and so that would be a great idea to create a drop-off on the school property leading on to a different street, which would mitigate that problem. I don't want to bog down too much here. We can ask, or as you can ask questions and so on at the end, but let me keep rolling. Again, they have a mobile classroom unit there that houses pre-K and EC, and once again, we'd like to remove all the mobile units across the district. Build some walls and doors in the pod. Now, Jefferson is not an open floor plan throughout, but it does have what they call the pod, which includes the library, a large open area. And again, there's very little structure in there in the way of walls, doors, and so on. And so within this suggestion, there is project and money included to take care of that problem. You know, it's funny, it wasn't a problem back 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It was thought to be a great idea to have open floor plans, but experience has proved otherwise. And so we could probably improve the facility and most of all the learning by putting some walls and doors there. The restrooms, a lot of these buildings are fairly old. Some of them built in the mid-50s up to the 60s. And the renovation of the restrooms is a really good idea because some of those fixtures are actually original fixtures. In some cases, you can go into some of the schools and just replace tile and new partitions maybe. In some cases, you really better just gut the thing and start over. So that's recommended for Jefferson. Total cost, about $600,000. Lincoln, okay, another secured entrance. Again, this one comes out of the operations maintenance budget. And that's in part, as I understand from Tammy, because there are some things that staff can actually do. In some cases, the project's too big, or the skills required aren't with the folks in Tammy's department, but in other cases, they can do some things. And so that's why you see the difference between the operations maintenance budget versus something coming out of the construction grant. Okay, remove the mobile classroom unit again. This one, though, doesn't house pre-K EC, but rather the library and the band. So they're holding actual classes all the time in there for mandated programs, as opposed to pre-K EC, which is not necessarily a mandated program. Renovate the restrooms. Here we are again with some old fixtures and some need to work on those restrooms. And in the case of Lincoln, we noticed, in fact, we spoke with the teacher, that they don't even use the blinds because they're so hard to operate. And when it comes time for the tech committee to give its report, I'm just guessing, but I'll bet you're going to say something about smart boards. And we thought that it would be really nice to be able to make the room dark enough to actually see what's on the screen. So we recommend that, in Lincoln's case at least, that we replace some blinds there. This total cost is a little bit less, $200,000. So next one is Malta. Again, another secured entrance, which, as you know, you approved the bid and bids are in. Malta needs a secured entrance. They don't have anything like that right now. And Malta's a little different than the rest of the schools. It was a high school. And because of that, it has some very nice things that you might not otherwise find in an elementary level school. But it did have one thing we noticed that we thought would be a good idea, and that would be to replace the single glazed windows. I think, Tracy, you talked about energy efficiency and ways we can multiply our money and so on. We did look in that direction when suggesting and considering these things. And there's one area where we could perhaps save some money that way. Replace those with double glazed or triple glazed windows. And Tammy has worked up the cost estimate on that. So with the secured entrance and the windows, $550,000 in Malta. Clinton Rosette. Again, Clinton Rosette is a very large school. In the sense that Malta was a high school and now is an elementary school, you get some benefit from Clinton Rosette being larger and built for that kind of an idea. But it does have, and the board full well knows, and new members may not know this, but the board has discussed many times the drop-off situation at Clinton Rosette. A very difficult situation because it's an island. It's surrounded by Route 23 on one side and First Street on the other, and then Hillcrest, sort of a triangle. It has a good bit of land, but the land falls off. It's built on a hill, and there's some difficult engineering issues there. But the subcommittee decided that this would be one of the things we'd recommend, to go ahead and spend some money on designing and installing a safer drop-off area and some increased parking. So that's presuming that this happens next year, about $150,000 for that. Okay, finally, Cheeseboro, which is currently closed, and you've heard about the pre-KEC. We included this slide once again because it has impact on the 2 mobile units that now house pre-KEC elsewhere. It also has some impact if those children were taken and put at Cheeseboro rather than those other schools where those mobile units are. We could perhaps free up some overflow space at the other schools. So that's why we want to consider Cheeseboro, even though it is the focus and was recommended by the pre-KEC subcommittee. The total cost from the facility side, again, would be $500,000 to include some walls and doors. Again, Cheeseboro is another one of these open plan buildings. It does have some structure in there, more than Tyler, but we need to spend about $500,000 to do the secured entrance, a little bit of improvement for a drop-off lane, and make the walls and so on in there so they have actual classrooms. And that cost, of course, that $500,000 would not be lost if that building was at some future date used as an elementary school. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Okay, so one other big thing here, an elementary space expansion. We have right now 4 schools that have overflows, and we really could use some more space, even if we do the pre-KEC at Cheeseboro. At some point soon, well, even now, I suppose. And by the way, the facility parity subcommittee did not delve deeply into the overflows, into the issues of where children are, what schools. But we did look at how many there are. For instance, I think the newspaper reported about 185. We found over 100, I don't remember. Again, we didn't look deeply at it. But this is one of the things that we would recommend the district seriously consider soon, adding 8 to 10 classrooms, gym, and core facilities to an existing building. That would help to remove the mobile classroom units. It would reduce overflows. And this is very important. Down the road, it would provide some headroom on capacity. Right now, we have a number of buildings with enrollment much greater than capacity. As you know, the class sizes are significantly higher than we'd like them to be. And so this is something that we think would be a good use of about $4 million. The architect a little while back told us that it could be in the range of $2 to $4 million, depending on the size of the gym, whether or not you need many core facilities changed, and so on. But in some form, we're recommending that you add on some space at one of the buildings. We did look at several buildings as possibilities, but because we don't have very good data yet as to where future growth will be, we would recommend that you look more closely at that future enrollment and what areas and so on before a decision is made as to where you put this expansion. But we do believe that we do need the expansion even now. Okay, one other thing here, and this is kind of set by its side because that's how we would like to see the money set off to the side, a line item, budget item. There is significant disparity in the HVAC, and for anyone that doesn't know, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, that's what HVAC means. Some of the boilers, for instance, are steam boilers. They were made between 1950 and 1960, and some of them are still going. It's incredible. Those things were built like tanks, and yet at the same time, they're very inefficient. You really can't renovate them and add digital controls and things like that, and they could stop at any time. They're working now. Fortunately, across the district, the buildings are heated. In some cases, are cooled. But there is some concern about whether we would lose a boiler in the middle of the winter, and therefore we thought it would be a real good idea to include some HVAC items in our recommendations. Now, the buildings are minimally acceptable right now at all buildings, but we can't just go in and change out these boilers everywhere because Tammy has, what, a 5-year plan, right? And there are multiple millions of dollars that could be spent on HVAC. And we would choose not to spend all or even half of the $21 million construction grant on HVAC right now. But what we decided would be a good way to do this is to set aside $2.5 million, earmarked $500,000 per year for the next 5 years, which effectively gives you a kickstart or a jump, a boost on the O&M budget, which also, if you look at, you have seen some of Tammy's work, I'm sure, already. This would be a help to get started on some of these things, and also in a sense, an emergency fund. You know, if something goes down in the middle of the winter, you know, well, you know, maybe you have a little more money in your budget set aside, restricted for HVAC, that then could be tapped into. And we would leave it to Tammy and the architects as to which building to start with. I will say that there are many buildings that have many HVAC issues, for instance, the ventilation. Back in the day when they were built, the windows were intended to be open. The doors were sometimes intended to be open. That's not so much how things are operated today. And so ventilation in the buildings is an issue in a number of the buildings, even in some of the gyms where you need a great deal of ventilation. So we saw that, but we realized that it would be overwhelming to the budget that we have to try and pour everything into this, even though there's a need. Another example would be electrical outlets. There are many places where you could use more electrical outlets. But rather than pour everything into one thing, HVAC, we said, let's set aside $2.5 million. So this is the method that we recommend, knowing that there is going to be more needed down the road. Okay, one other big thing, and that's the district equipment storage. When we sold Malta, the old Malta Elementary building, we lost some storage. Cheeseboro has been closed and is being used for storage right now. You can't put a truck inside Cheeseboro, but there's furniture and equipment and other district hardware that is over there. And if we choose to open Cheeseboro, or at least part of Cheeseboro, some of that storage will be lost. We saw this as a subcommittee as a long-term and protective investment. It was pretty amazing, actually, to see the things that staff, you always think of school maintenance, school facility, well, yeah, the custodian pushes a broom down the hallway. Well, no, they were putting new locks in and changing, you know, all kinds of physical plant things. And it appears that they will save a good deal of money if they can keep doing this. So this building, as well as becoming a storage place for some of the larger equipment. For instance, I know the board was informed some time back about the bucket trucks, you know, the High Rangers or whatever they call those kinds of vehicles, to go up and change the lights at the high school, for instance. Well, it was sitting out at Malta, but even though we had some storage at Malta, it would be a good idea to have some indoor storage for some of the larger equipment, like, for instance, that truck and other equipment. You could do more or less with this kind of a building. You could just build cold storage at about $12, $15 a square foot. But that would be just that, cold storage. Trucks in there might not start when it gets cold. So you might want to build something a little better than that. So the range was $200,000 to $400,000. In the final slide, the second to final slide, you'll see $300,000 is what we recommend. Yeah, here we are on the final, the next one. But that building could be a great asset to the district. And ask Tammy, she has some ideas about where it might go and so on. And of course, the architect has come up with some of the cost values on that kind of a thing. Okay, finally, to my caveats, boy, every time you present an initial report, there's always some caveats. Ultimately, many times more money are required to fix it all. I want to go back and and I'm sure you know more about this than I do. The referendum, $110 million that passed that allowed us to build a new high school and Cortland Elementary, was intended to be staged with the second referendum that would bring equity across the district. And that, as I recall, was about $80 to $100 million. You know, that referendum, had it been able to be brought to the public. Well, then came the Great Recession, you know, and it's not very likely that anytime soon that's going to be passed or even brought up. So recognize that while we come up with a dollar amount here on the next slide, we really need to spend an awful lot more to bring true equity in terms of facility across the district. But we think we can do a good job as a beginning with this particular presentation. There are still going to be some parity issues, even if we do all this work that's been suggested. But there'll be much less critical items. There'll be more into that harmonious level, not so much into the foundational and the essential. So again, keep some of these caveats in mind. Also, a really important one, future legislation has potential to change everything. For better or for worse, we really don't know which way it will go. I suppose you could guess it might go for worse the way they've been going in Springfield lately. But anyway, that could change what might be recommended either soon or a bit later. And then finally, just a caveat that some of these costs are conceptual estimates. As time moves on, they can become more firm, more known. Okay, the final money slide here. The initial proposal from our group is that we spend $11.4 million. You can see how it breaks out there. You got the, I guess my laser does work, okay. You got the $800,000, which the bids just came in. Right about that, Malta was a little bit higher, and Little John was a little bit lower, but it's still in that range. $2 million if we renovate Tyler, so that would be a big chunk of money there. 1.3 million, which is all of these upgrades that we just saw on the slides at these other locations. 4 million for the elementary expansion, wherever that might be, yet to be determined. The $2.5 million set aside for the HVAC work. And again, facility operations would determine based on what's most likely to fail first, and then secondly, what's the least efficient. You know, we would probably look at those kinds of things and choose how to spend that $2.5 million. If it would be approved, $500,000 for the Cheesebro renovation, and then the $300,000, which again is in the middle of the range of 200 to 400 for a district equipment storage facility. So $11.4 million, and we believe that this amount would help to mitigate what we see as clear findings now. So finally, my last slide. What does the board want us to do? Do you desire us to continue to work on this? Do you need further advice? Should the subcommittee or some variation of a subcommittee or other group produce a data-driven study? Particularly the timing will have an impact on what's determined and what's recommended. Some actions by others will affect what we would say as a facility committee. And then probably most of all is this connection between dependent or non-interdependent parity projects. For instance, tonight you're going to talk about pre-K EC at Cheesebro. Depending on what happens there, we may or may not be able to remove the mobiles from 2 other buildings that now house pre-K EC. Okay? It's an example of the interdependence. There's so many things that are independent. At the FFAC meeting when I presented this, we talked about timelines, and we see that there are essentially 2 different timelines. There's a very simple timeline that can be developed fairly quickly that would let you make choices and decisions on projects that are not interdependent. Lighting, for instance, in the classroom. That's pretty straightforward. On the other hand, there are other things. The $4 million recommendation to build an 8 to 10 classroom expansion in one of the buildings. Well, which building? We really need a new demographic study. The last one, I took a look at it. The information in that, the data was based on the 2000 census. That was a 2009 project that the district looked at in the year or so after that. And that really needs to be updated. That's what we would recommend. And try to get a better handle on where growth will happen. I talked to folks at the city of DeKalb and the county and tried to get a handle on where growth will be. It's pretty difficult. Demographics expert would probably be a big help, plus first time probably would be again in determining where that growth will be. As an example, Iron Gate, if it's approved, or some variation of that, would bring in over 1,000 students to the district. There are a couple of other planned unit developments that could happen that would bring more students to the district. The overflows will change from time to time, and some better expert than I would probably tell you more specifically. But again, let us know. We'd be glad to help in any way that we can. But this is what we have. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to try and answer them.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I want to make it clear that it wasn't only me. You know, Andrea and Tammy, Joe Cothey, Brad Brown, Ray Faber, and Jeannie Fierce were all on this committee, and they all contributed in very different ways and with a great deal of enthusiasm. So the committee has done a very good job. I thank the committee for a lot of this work. So again, any questions?
So open up to the board for questions. Tracy?
For my money, Carrie, first and foremost, very well done. Thank you. And to the entire committee. I would like to see further action taken on quantifying some of this, I forget how you said it here, produce data-driven study.
Yeah.
I clearly get exactly what, said in on some of these conversations. And one of the things we did find was, you have this intuitive thought that clearly this should save money. And some of our conversations leading up to this, we found we didn't, right? So some of this stuff is very straightforward, but there clearly are some of these things that we'll really need to see a lot more data and information on.
That's right, Tracy, and I know you were interested some time back in cost savings through energy measures. Right now, natural gas prices are the lowest they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at a report that was actually from November 2012, and I've seen much more data since then, that would forecast an incredible growth in supply of natural gas. Of course, that's what we use to heat most of the buildings. That would drive the cost down, which would then reduce the cost savings that we would get if we, for instance, replaced all the HVAC district-wide. On the other hand, there's also an international group that's looked at energy that said that the cost will increase considerably, probably beyond the inflation index over the next 10 years, even though we have this great supply, simply because of domestic demand. And of course, the government gets to choose on how much of the gas we export. So they didn't think, the international group didn't think that was a big deal, that export part probably wouldn't change the price inside the United States by much. But these are the kinds of things that we need to look at more closely before we can make any very expensive recommendations on things that may or may not have a big return on investment. Things like the windows at Malta are slam dunk.
Yeah, right.
So we go ahead and recommend that. But whether you replace a complete HVAC system at a building, how much payback will you get? What will be the payback period? What's your return on investment? Those kinds of things need more data before a good recommendation could be made.
Well, you've done fabulous, and I know how much this takes, but I'm going to ask you for that data.
Well, go to the FFAC committee. Well, I presume you want to work through the FFAC committee.
Yeah, a couple of comments. One, this is just more bigger picture here. We are going to be receiving a report from the Technology Committee here in a couple of weeks. They are also going to be asking for funding from the $21 million grant. Ultimately, the board is going to have to weigh, how much of the grant money do we want to keep aside? I think because of pension issues and so forth, and how much can we put into upgrading the buildings and upgrades on technology. So those are things the board's going to have to weigh, and I think we're going to need, as Tracy mentioned, some of that, a little bit more data to back up some of the decisions that we might be making. But that's just so this isn't all. I guess that was the point.
Yeah, this is an initial report.
This is an initial report from one of the subcommittees of the FFAC. Cohen, there's another one coming. Just a couple of questions. These are more basic to the presentation. Malta, for example. What is the opportunity for receiving grants to cover that, since it's an energy upgrade? Are there grants out there potentially that we can research to maybe cover a significant part of those costs?
There are some energy grants that are out there. I have to look into how long those grants are going to be available, because this is a project we won't be able to tackle until next summer, as well as if it would qualify. So those are something we're looking at. As you know, we are looking at them for the lighting grants right now. We'd be looking at them if the lighting project at Little John is approved, looking at it for the interior and what we can get back to those programs.
Another question is, I know Clinton Rosette has been on topic for many meetings, rectifying that situation. The question is it really feasible? Or
to put the new lane in or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's feasible. I don't think it'll be easy. I think it is feasible.
Because I think the plans that we've seen in the past, does it really help, or does it make the problem potentially even worse?
I think that's a good question. I don't think this committee is prepared to answer that in any particular way. something certainly needs to be done. How exactly you do that? Again, this is one of the areas where I personally saw a need for more information and a bigger scope. Clinton Rosette is currently over capacity, as I recall. It's not over capacity. I'm not thinking of that. Okay, well, at any rate,
I think a couple of years ago.
I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the 1,000 kids that are coming in from Iron Gate. We have 2 middle schools, folks. We have a lot of elementary schools. We have 2 middle schools, right? You know, the old high school, now Huntley, has extra space. Unfortunately, when those new developments get built out, we won't have enough space probably on the north side. So the reason that your question is so pertinent is if you had to add on to Clinton Rosette, then what would you do with that land that had now been covered over, for instance, with blacktop or whatever? Yeah, so that is a very important issue. And we tried to keep the scope of our committee narrow. Simply, first of all, because there were some very clear disparities that we wanted to get to you right away. But there are also some bigger picture items, you know, that really needed more input, more data before a valid decision could be made.
Next question, we might get into this when we get into the Cheeseboro discussion tonight. Do we know approximately per square footage cost if we renovated all of Cheeseboro as opposed to just 80% of it?
I do not. Based on the timeline we've been under to get this project put together for approval, we've really kept our scope just on that 2/3 of the building that we've been looking to open. I've already opened up discussions with the architect. Should this be delayed past this school year, that is something we want to look into, is all of those options. But we'll get into that with the Cheeseboro presentation.
I'm just thinking that maybe that might be the most efficient way of doing it if we're looking at that down the road. Last question was on storage. There's a lot of empty places maybe in the community. Do you guys think of rents? Or
Yeah, in fact, it had been brought up in previous board meetings, FFAC meetings, going back quite some time. And we did discuss that in the subcommittee, the possibility of leasing or renting space. There is a great deal of space available in the community. One of the problems with that would be if the board and the administration should want a facility where there's actually a workshop, you know, where we could leverage, multiply the advantage that we have seen already in internal staff taking care of some of these problems. Then it would be wise perhaps to have something that's central and something that is built to a specific goal. Now, could you find something like that in the market? Perhaps. It would be worth looking. But you have to keep in mind that there are some things that would be maybe specific or somewhat specific to our needs. And so you can't just pick any building anywhere. It would have to be something very, very closely suited to what would maximize the existing benefit and the future benefit.
Other questions?
Yeah. Just curious, the involvement of the principals and the recommendation that you're targeting individual schools. So how is the principal engaged in the recommendation of the prioritization?
Yeah, good question, Cohen. It was not our intent to talk to staff, teachers, administrators, but we did run into some. Christy, in fact, was with us throughout. And we were more than happy to have them with us because it's always, you usually get more information that way, right? Rather than being a stranger in the building. Never been there before in my case in some of these buildings. So we didn't intend, it wasn't by design, but we were happy that some of them were candid.
The initial report that was submitted to FFAC of the 5-year study, that was compiled with data from principals, staff, custodians, maintenance. We first solicited their input and then worked with the architect to identify the needs out in the buildings themselves. So there was their input solicited, even though it may not have been through the actual tours in the subcommittee.
Yeah, and the 5-year plan, which as I remember is about 40 million or a little more, something like that, right, Tammy? Yeah, that 5-year plan was sort of the foundation where we started looking. You know, we had already reviewed that at the FFAC, the whole committee. The subcommittee looked at it again, talked about various things, decided what to consider, what to set aside. So that's a great document and a good plan going forward, and also illustrates once again, that's $40 million. They're not all parity issues. Some of them aren't, some of them are. But that was a good place to start. And I would like it if we could get more input at some point in time, that's right, from administrators, teachers, even parents, even maybe in some cases the kids might be able to tell us something. So a lot of these things can be beneficial to understanding the whole, but we were just trying to zoom in, get a quick snapshot of disparity across the district on the physical level, the plant level, and bring it to the board. Joe Bolte had a slight flip chart page, and this goes back to your question earlier, Tom, about how much to spend on this kind of work out of that 21 million. And I think we recognized at the outset that as the facility committee, we weren't going to get all that 21 million. We'd sure enough spend it for you, but we knew we weren't going to get all of it. And so we put in about 4 different line items and just guessed, and hopefully educated guesses at what might be spent at different purposes. The technology committee obviously was one of those. Pre-KEC was one of those. And we came up with that $11 million number as something that we would recommend right now. We had no qualms, we had full consensus to spend that kind of money on these particular issues. And we believe a timeline can be quickly built for some of those findings, and then the department can put that into a project list and get it into, presuming you approve it, into actual work sometime soon. That's one reason we wanted to get this to you now, rather than wait for the data. There needs to be data on the big picture expenditures and the big picture across the district, but there are some of these discrete projects, for $1 million or less each, that we thought ought to go forward as fast as possible. We have the money, and as soon as they can be arranged, all the documentation, the bids and so on, they probably should go forward if that's what you think is important.
We'll follow up to that. I mean, I guess as we continue down this road, one thing I would like to see is just the principals themselves, either being part of the presentation or approving, from their perspective, the feet in the street, these will make the biggest impact in my building. And making sure there is alignment there. I'm sure there's going to be, because they're part of the 5-year plan, but it'd just be nice to know that there was no disconnect during this process. We're getting feedback from all parties. The other thing, that 11.4 is completely independent of the O&M budget, right?
Yes.
11.4 required out of the 21 million.
That's correct. Now, the 2 entrances that were in the O&M budget that you saw on the slides, okay, that's separate money.
Yep.
Okay, but yeah, the 11.4 takes care of everything else that was on the slides.
Are there any elementary schools or any schools at all with just one boiler? Or do they all have redundancies?
No, they do not all have redundancies.
No. The majority are single boiler units. They're single steam units. The estimates would include replacing them with hot water, and it would be 2 boilers. I'd also like to just make one other comment in regards to the $40 million budget. Even though you're only seeing certain projects with certain buildings that are up here, there are many other projects that are slated to be done through the operations and maintenance budget and life safety budget that this committee is not even diving into, but they are already projected for either this summer or future summers, so that these other buildings are not being neglected by any stretch. It's just a matter of it's not being considered for the construction grant money.
Yeah, you have to remember that this committee was put together not to be an oversight for the facility operations department, but rather to take a little different perspective, and look at disparity rather than, for Tammy's budget, that department's budget, and what the work is planned to be, and so on. I wanted, when we started the meeting in the very beginning, to look at that list, that project list, that 5-year plan, but not to be bound by it, not to be cordoned in by that, rather to get our vision out in a more broad manner and look at all of the buildings from a different angle. But it was very helpful to have that 5-year plan, and particularly helpful to have the cost already determined by the architect with the department. That made this go much faster. We probably wouldn't have been able to report this anytime soon had we needed to develop our own cost estimates and everything. So.
Going forward, I'm going to throw out kind of, I think, maybe how to possibly move forward with this, but I'd like more input on this. But I really think if we take this information that we have tonight, I think we need to combine it with the technology meeting that we're going to have on June 17th. We look at these in totality we can maybe decide at that point, whether we meet, maybe have a joint meeting with the Finance and Facilities Group to kind of parcel through and decide where we want to go. We could ask them for their recommendation, combining the two. We could meet with them and work on that together. Maybe we can talk about it again a couple more times in public meetings, get opinions, especially from principals and parents and teachers as well. But hopefully, kind of pull all this together and looking at the big picture and maybe making some direction and decisions, prioritizing, putting together a timeline on some of the no-brainers like Carrie said that we maybe should move ahead with really quickly. But to begin that process this summer sometime, we'll make those decisions. Input, Jim?
Actually, the FFAC, I think, had talked about, they have a meeting set up purposely the first week in June. And their idea would be to come to the board at the second board meeting in June with exactly what you said.
Okay.
All the subcommittees' timelines and cost, and then it could go from there.
Okay. Other direction? Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Really appreciate it. Okay, next presentation, Dr. Mueller, middle school schedule update. This is an information item.
Just to provide a little bit of history here, the middle school subcommittee arose out of recommendations by the Career and College Readiness Committee that examined K-12 mathematics last year. We came to the board in November and presented the initial plan. The board requested costs associated with that. We brought that back in December, and then in January provided the final report. One of the biggest disparities was in the minutes of mathematics at the middle school. The state average was over 65 minutes. We're currently running at 43 minutes. So that's what prompted when the board then approved the recommendations of that Career College Readiness report, we had to revisit the middle school schedule. So that's sort of the history of why we went through this. So we actually, this is again another subcommittee of the FFAC. The members of the committee are Victoria Newport, Tracy Williams, Roger Scott, Tim Vincent, the other middle school principal, and myself. The two charges we were given by from the board and then through the FFAC was to increase math minutes and try to reduce some costs along the way. There was two initial meetings held for the subcommittee. First of all, given those new parameters, there was one model that was put forth and proposed. We had Roger and Tim did most of the work on that because they're the middle school experts with scheduling. We brought that back for an initial presentation to the FFAC. They asked us to go back and also include some other variables. For example, if we were going to be cutting out some elective classes, they wanted to know what those classes would be. So we held another subcommittee meeting. That meeting was then attended by several DCTA members who provided feedback and also voiced some concerns. So based on that, we came up with another model. Then what we did was we combined there were two alternative schedules also proposed that were brought forth by members of the FFA, or by the DCTA. So what we did was we ended up creating a comparison of all four models side by side, and basically what we looked at was minutes for all courses, not just the core academic courses, but also for any elective courses. We looked at savings in FTE, if any, and then we looked at what courses may be cut due to electives given the schedules. This information was shared with FFAC. A week from tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to be having our leadership team meeting. We're going to do a presentation at that meeting and present that information. Then on Tuesday, the 4th of June, Dr. Briscoe and I are going to present it to the faculty at Huntley Middle School. And on the 5th of June, we're going to present to the faculty at Clinton Rosette Middle School. When that's over with, the subcommittee will plan to reconvene, make any final tweaks we feel are necessary, and then our timeline is to bring that back at the second board meeting with not only a schedule but a couple of options, because there are some things that you can save some FTE, if you exclude the private music lessons that are currently given at the middle school. And so we want to give you a couple options to consider. But that's the timeline right now, and again, we want to get a lot of stakeholder input for all this. That's why we're going to meet with the middle schools.
Questions for Dr. Mueller? Victoria, Tracy, I know you guys sat on that subcommittee. You feel comfortable with where we're going?
Very comfortable.
So this would be for the 2014-15 school year potential?
Yes, oh yes, absolutely, yes. And then we'll also have the timeline associated with it along with the same time. I guess what we want to put, Andrew and I talked about putting together, well, Kevin talked about putting together is having one big timeline with everything, for the recommendations from the facilities subcommittee, the tech committee, the middle school committee. What was the fourth one, Andrew? It'll be a wonderful graphic. The pre-K EC timeline. So, all four on one timeline. So
okay, well, I just want to say I appreciate you going out and talking to stakeholders and getting the rest of that input. We look forward to the presentation in June.
Thank you.
Okay, non-business consent agenda. As always, any members are welcome to remove one of these items, but it's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda, items A through G. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Nina Fontana? Yes. Vicki Hernan-Taylor? Yes. Mary Hess? Yes. Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Business consent agenda. It's been recommended the Board of Education approve business consent agenda items A through F. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vicki Hernan-Taylor? Yes. Mary Hess? Yes. Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Fontana? Yes.
Okay, now we'll move on to the business and finance section. And we have a presentation for discussion tonight for information, extension of contract with Chartwells for 2013-14 school year. Andrea?
Yes. So in your packet, we have information. Currently, this year, we have Chartwells as our food service provider, and this is the first year that we've had them. And under the conditions of which the state allows us to extend contracts for food service, we have to go out to bid every 5th year, with the exception of if the vendor no longer wants to do business with you or feels that under the current economic conditions they cannot afford to continue doing business with you, that would force you out to bid as well, which was the case that happened to us last year when we were with Sodexo. Because of the change in the National School Food Federal Program and being required to have to provide more fruits and vegetables, these contractors can only increase your contract by CPI, and there's 2 different CPIs you can choose from. The CPIU all, which is what our contract is under, or the CPI food away from home. So under those restrictions, if they cannot provide a contract increase to abide by that, you're forced to go out to bid. No changes in regulations that would significantly increase the cost for food service. So under our current contract, we are looking to extend that 1 more year to Chartwells, and the increase is outlined as attached with a 1.7% increase. I can tell you in total, relatively, because it's based on the number of meals served. Last year with Sodexo, we spent $1,087,975. So it gives you, and of course this year we're currently not done with Chartwells However, to date, I believe we're about 1,200,000 into Chartwell's. And again, that's because of the price increase. So that gives you just about, in round numbers, approximately what we spend on food service. So at this juncture, what we're just asking is any conversation, it's a discussion at this point. At the next meeting, we would be coming back to you with approval to extend that contract for another year.
Questions from Andrea? Overall, how would you rate Chartwell's performance?
I think they've done very well. We've been monitoring our participation level, and that has decreased. And unfortunately, when we look at the data for other school districts as well, who are on the federal national school lunch program, which gives restrictions to us as far as what types of meals we could provide to our students with dietary limitations. Because of that change, the food is different and tastes different to the students. So again, it's all about keeping this well-balanced meal. And I think that becomes a challenge. And although I think the students are getting used to it, I will forewarn you, for the years coming ahead, those guidelines get stricter and stricter with caloric and sodium restrictions. So the food is a bit bland. But because we're part of this program, those are the constraints that we have to work within.
Do our principals or teachers here use the food service? No?
You know, that baked chicken was really good. Kids thought I made it. There's a couple things and things kind of, and I get the sodium thing, but you know, it's not that bad. I eat some of the food every once in a while. Well, I help serve sometimes and I'll taste because I'm a foodie. I don't know if I'm gonna eat it, but I think that baked chicken was probably, that barbecue chicken was probably the best I've ever seen.
Victoria?
I guess one thing I've seen just looking at the menu is that they seem to serve the same thing quite often, like a cheese pizza can be on the menu 6-7 times in a month.
Right.
So, you know, maybe, I don't know if they can do a little more variety or not, but that's one thing I have seen is that the same thing seems to turn up quite a few times during the month.
That's a good point, but actually what was told to us when we were one of the few districts that were audited this year under this new program, and we passed. Congratulations to us for that, because they do go out and they look at each of those menus. They are telling us on the meals that you look at that are the most commonly eaten meals to keep repeating those. They're the ones who actually had told us if pizza is a meal that the students like, put it on the menu every single day and let them choose, because we always have options. But again, to be clear, when we say our pizza, it's the low sodium, it's the wheat grain, so it's not, and I don't want to choose a vendor to say another restaurant to compare to, but it certainly is not the same pizza if you were to go out to a restaurant. It falls within the caloric intake, and because of the low-fat cheese and the grain for the crust, it is a healthier meal. So that is one thing. In order to get your participation up, they said look at the days when you see high participation and keep putting those on the menu. So yeah, because we thought we were being so great by changing things up, and they said the whole enticement is find the meals the students like and just put them out there because we want them to eat. This is the healthier meal of choice, and so that is what we have modified the meals towards.
I see you had your hand up.
I just wanted to share that Chartwell's and Carol Warren, who's been a wonderful liaison to Chartwell's, they do serve on the wellness committee, our district wellness committee, and so we're able to provide input at those committee meetings, which has been very helpful.
Right.
I just want to comment about the pizza. The flax seed in the pizza crust leaves a lot to be desired.
That's not our priority, Doug.
Actually, at the high school, any of the schools that we put on site at, the meals look so different than the schools we have to satellite out to. So unfortunately, that's our challenge. When your child's eating at a building that the food is satellited out at, that's more of a challenge because it's being kept in warmers and being delivered. When you go and eat pizza at the high school or at Cortland or Malta, when it's being made fresh on site and delivered to the student, those meals just, fortunately, look a lot different and are far more appealing than those that are kind of delivered out through our satellite venue.
The only thing I'm sure maybe we do this, but do we communicate with the parents about the wellness component of the food and promote that this is part of the diet?
In fact, yes, initiative for us for next year is to do more marketing on that and to get actually as part of every school's PTA and PTO meetings, to be part of those meetings, to start that conversation with the parent, because we do get calls, and I've talked to parents as well, when they see a meal such as the pizzas or a chips and cheese type of thing where they don't feel that is a valuable meal. I will tell you that Chartwell's has nutritionists that are looking at all these meals, so they have to fall in within those guidelines. But again, I think when the perception is from outside, when you're seeing these meals, you're equating it to perhaps a restaurant type meal and not quite aware of that our breads are all the grains and the cheeses are the low fat. So that is initiative for next year, is to get out there and have our parents better acquainted with what our restrictions are.
So consensus of the board to bring this back for action in our next meeting? Okay, thank you, Andrew. The next is an action item, approval of the handbooks. Who oversaw this?
Anna and I.
Well,
Brooke for the middle
we have
school.
elementary, middle, and high school reps here who can explain the process.
Yeah, could you maybe break down and talk about the process a little bit? I think it's very informative.
Sure. From an elementary standpoint.
Sure.
For all of us. From an elementary standpoint, what we did, Anna and I are co-chairs of the district PBIS committee. And along with the internal coaches who are part of that committee, we also have those who are involved in the handbook, because they tend to jive together anyway. And so what we did was we asked for input from the building principals, talk to your teachers, what are some things of concern, and send them to us. And we just inserted everything. And we highlighted some of the noted recommendations for revision, deletions, and whatnot. And then we showed it to the PBIS district committee. We went over it, we discussed it, some things like our ODR process, how we file those attendance and gather more input. After we did that, we met back with the principals and showed them the recommendations. And we cut, paste, deleted, revised again. And then we sent that back to the PBIS handbook committee for a final run through. And then we showed that to the principals, and once we felt that we've addressed all of those concerns, we sent it and placed it in your hands, which in your attachment, I believe is color-coded, so you wouldn't have to read, 80 pages of the handbook. Anything that's highlighted in yellow would be the changes we recommended. You may see some things in yellow with a strikeout. We didn't want to just take it out and you not be aware, so we just kind of noted that we're removing this. And I think there's one item in green, and that was one of those very last things that was recommended after the fact. So we just made that green to show that was one more addition. Doesn't make it any less valuable compared to the yellow items in there. And then at the very last one that we learned about, I believe it's pesticides or asbestos of some sort.
Pesticides and asbestos.
Yep.
And so we just added that this week. So if you have any questions about anything that's highlighted.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, because obviously this wasn't just a look and stamp and approval. I mean, because there's a lot of revisions in here. There's a lot of yellow pages as you go through here, and and that made it a lot easier to go through, to be quite honest with you. But I'm going to open it up for board members' Any questions here for the committees? Could just the committee members introduce themselves, please?
Yeah, stand up and introduce yourselves.
I'm Anna Hoyu, I'm the principal at Lincoln, and I co-chair the elementary PBS with Sharon.
I'm Brooke Condon, the assistant principal at Rosette. Tish Dawkins is not here, but she's also worked on the middle school committee. We followed the same process, except for at the middle school, we also met with the student councils at each school to get student feedback, and we had a parent meeting with some parent reps. Ours, we really didn't highlight the changes in ours because we changed the entire format of the middle school to match the high school format. So our entire handbook looks very different from last year, but the policies and procedures were kept the same.
I'm Aaron Osborne. I'm in the high school. Mr. Chamberlain also helped at the high school level. We followed a format where we met with teachers in the building and went page by page through the handbook and looked at the different sections, along with, we had a couple different sessions meeting where we invited parents in to look at specific sections of the handbook and address any areas of concern they had as well. And then met with the middle school multiple times to talk about what they were seeing and what we're seeing and how we can kind of align back and forth.
And then we did have one joint committee, K-12, and just so we tried to align wherever we could, like our acceptable use agreement that's at the very end of the handbook that we took right from the technology committee. So anywhere we could align the K-12 handbooks, we tried to.
And also, we sent a copy, the same version you have for all the elementary principals, because we know that it's been quite a while since the handbook has been revised. And so if you have family after family thinking they know the handbook, you know, maybe they might read it, might not. We made the recommendation, the principals, you may want to review some of the things highlighted, and then maybe in places like your open house, point that out to families, because that way, when everything is nice and easy at the beginning of the year, it will make those most difficult conversations a little less burdensome and difficult later because of those changes.
Well, thank you for all your work.
Yeah, I appreciate the changes being highlighted as
Yeah.
well.
When they're all in their final form, may we get copies of all the different handbooks so that we have them in our...
Absolutely.
I'll just take the electronic version.
Yeah.
And they're always posted on the website,
Right.
Friends.
I know that.
Under every school.
Like in my hand. Found language arts. Like in my hand.
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the elementary, middle school, and high school handbooks.
So moved.
Move your second.
Second.
Second by Victoria. Roll call, please. Discussion first, any discussion? Roll call.
Mary Hess? Yes. Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Cohen Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Fontana? Yes. Vicki Lynn in favor?
Yes.
Motion passes. Again, thank you for all your hard work. The next presentation, Dr. Briscoe, I'm going to turn it over to you for the elementary student overflow update and discussion of a couple options here.
Sure. Well, it's just it's an information item because I want to publicly talk about. We're constantly strategizing on how to communicate with parents about overflows and what we can do to remedy issues that occurred. Now we've been doing this 3 years. There was an article in the paper today that covered the fact we've been in this process for 3 years, and now with the overflows, we have probably about 150, I think, approximately overflows. So we decided this year, and I wanted to communicate to you so you know, that we're having all the elementary principals we met, and we're going to have them send home a letter to all parents who have not registered yet, K-5, to tell them that you have till June 7th. After June 7th, if you haven't registered your child, this would be about the second time they'd be communicated with, then that space is open, there's no guarantee. We're also going to do a voicemail to parents. The key here is we want to communicate very clearly what we need their help here to register their child if they want that seat. Then with that said, we're going to identify all the overflow students over the past 3 years and the reason why. And each building will have that with them. We're going to meet on the 12th of June. We'll have all the current registered students, and we'll be able to identify spaces and then go into the overflows and identify families we can call and ask if they want to go back to their home school. It's not going to correct everything, but it'll clean it up significantly compared to previous years, because then we'll go to registration on the 24th, and elementary principals will meet again in early August to to deal with requests from parents we'll receive all summer. But the good news is we've dealt with all the parents who were on a waiting list and so on early on, and that'll be taken care of. So I just wanted to communicate to you the process. We're trying to improve communication. We're trying to get out there and get our arms around this. Obviously, overflows, hopefully, working with the demographer and whatever, depending on decisions made with early childhood down the road, we'll have time to look at where space will be and make some more modifications, minor modifications and boundaries down there, which we would come back in the fall with, obviously, for your approval.
Questions for Dr. Disco?
The overflow, I think, part of that problem comes from too, where we have our special programs. Part of that is, Cortland has bilingual students out there. They have a K through 2 sections, and 3 through 5, 5th grade, 1 section. And Littlejohn doesn't have any bilingual program in it. And then I know, so we're busing kids out to Cortland, then we're turning around, I think there's 60 overflow students from Cortland. So are those special programs in the correct buildings? And I think that's something we should look at. Again, when we come up with, that could be a problem with special programs, but also, are we using the proper schools? For example, Brooks could not have another section K through 5. Could we use that for some special programs and alleviate maybe some from Lincoln, so they could use the space in their building more efficiently? So I think there's more to this than just, the demographics. It's special programs and what space the buildings have also in them.
It's going to have to all be looked at when we sit down.
None of us from the board, when those decisions were made, putting them in certain buildings, what was the rationale behind it?
What happened was when we opened in Cortland, there weren't the flow in from Cortland. There was a lot of space in Cortland. So the idea was to get rid of the portables, and Littlejohn had 3 portables at the time, two, and they were housing some of the ELL program. So the idea was to use the space at Cortland for the ELL. And now what's happened is there's been growth out of Cortland, and we're seeing it at the kindergarten, 1st grade level. So unfortunately, they get bussed back up. So there ended up being 2 sections out at Cortland, and there's only 1 section at Founders. So it's definitely has to be re-evaluated in where these programs, and it's not just ELL programs, we have other programs that, when I say programs, it means we move the program to the building because we can better utilize our resources by having them located in one area. So we're not trying to identify a student population and move them around. It's the program and where we can house it the best. So there are other programs in the district in special education we also need to take a look at. And the good news is if we have time to assess that with the overflows, we can come back to the board with another plan. Hopefully that'll get us through 4 or 5 years where we're not having 150 kids all over the district.
Well, I just think that's a big part of the overflow issue.
Huge part of it, yeah.
Is the special programs, and then making sure that we're utilizing the classrooms properly in the buildings. Like I said, Brooks can't house another K through 5th grade. Could they house something, a special program, and utilize that space better?
Any other questions for Dr. Briscoe? Okay, one other. Okay, the next item is information and possible consideration for approval of either option number 1 or option number 2 for a pre-K early childhood center at Chiefsboro School. So the questions been asked for option A and B. Jim, do you want to talk about this?
I will turn that over.
Right.
Andrea?
Yes.
Okay, please.
So actually what we outlined for you here, of course, the previous meeting, we had demonstrated through the subcommittee the importance of a pre-K center. And exactly, actually, Victoria, as you had brought up, some of the issues are the space constraints then by having certain programs out at other buildings that then leaves that building with less space to continue for families who actually live through that area. So with that, the the subcommittee had asked that we move forward with the pre-K EC Center for next school year. However, in doing that, we did recognize once that came forward some issues that still needed to be addressed. Or if that does happen, that we perhaps will not be able to make changes to boundaries just because of the time limitations placed on us. So under option 1 is to move forward to open the building for the next school year, but we would not be able to address any of the boundary changes for the following school year, thus leaving everybody kind of settled where they currently are. And then we have outlined for you some expenses and broke them down a little differently than previously stated. For initial expense being the radios that would have to be purchased and some maintenance equipment for the total of $11,500. Then annual ongoing expenses we took a look at, and that's between custodial supplies, recycling pickup, repairs and maintenance, and utilities again. With that building for a total of $73,000. And then staffing costs to open that building for a custodial, administrator, health assistant, and secretary, that would total $210,000. So the grand total to open that building is $294,500. And if you subtract about $11,000 out of that, that would be continuing ongoing expenses. So again, you're looking at about $283,000 of ongoing operating expenses added to our budget next year. Under option 2, we had said if you postpone this to the 2014-15 school year, some things that we could address because of the time frame in there, and that would be to plan for the day-to-day operations of the pre-K EC expense. We could then spend some energy on working with the demographer to really take a look at our elementary schools and where our population of students are coming from. And also that would be addressing some overflow issues and allow us some additional time to communicate this out to our families. So it just buys us a little more time to do some communication and boundary shifts if you go with the option 2, which later then will present the facility side of things that Tammy has, which then parallels option 1 and option 2 as far as what we would be able to do or not do as far as the facility renovation side of things.
Questions, comments?
With option 1, it just worries me that we're jumping into something extremely quick, especially adding close to $300,000 to a budget deficit already. So I guess I have concerns with option number 1 for that.
Yeah, I know me and Colin, you were able to get at the last meeting, but we spent quite a bit of time talking about this, and I think in general there's consensus that this is the right move for the future of the district. But due to the quickness, as Victoria just said, to try and get this all implemented, and we think there's some other things that we can add to this plan, which Andrew just laid out, and then just the cost. I mean, adding that to a potential $2.3 million deficit is, I don't think that's a good thing to do at this time. So I would support option 2. I mean, deferring it for a decision for that point in time. So we're not actually making a decision right now to say we're definitely going to do it in 2014-15, but we're deferring it for a possibility to open up in 2014-2015. And we just have to keep our options open right now where we are with the whole budgeting process. Okay. So I don't really think we need to take an official motion on this. I think we're just deferring to look at option 2 at a later date. Does that make sense? Okay. We're going to move on then about the actual building renovations then. And so, Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you and Tammy again.
Yes. Actually, Tammy?
Knowing that the board has decided to choose option 2 at this time. What I am recommending is that then we take a step back and revisit the renovation project and look at some other options in regards to potentially doing the entire building rather than just 2/3 of it, and there's some cost savings, as well as some other deficiencies in that building that could be addressed since the time frame has been expanded. With that, I would bring it back to the board later this summer, and with the request to go out for approval to bid, so these projects could potentially be done over the school year rather than trying to crunch it into a 3-month time frame or less for next summer. Then we potentially could have it ready for the pre-K EC staff to start moving in at the first of next summer again, so the time frame isn't such a tight schedule.
Your consensus to follow Tammy's recommendation, go with option 2? Yes. So we'll be seeing some things coming forward. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah. Next item is approval of full-time equivalents for increased certified staff for the 2013-14 school year. Connie.
During the last board meeting, we presented what we thought possibilities for increasing staff for next year, and you asked that we go back and re-look at it and attach the cost. So what we did is we kind of broke it down into 3 different presentations, and the first one that I'm going to talk about are the 3 building increases that we have to have because the students are there. At the high school, you can see between decreasing in some areas and increasing in others, we need to increase FTE in the high school by 0.85. These are estimated costs because we haven't hired people for these positions, so we don't know exactly where they will come in at the salary schedule. So what I did is I estimated it based in somebody coming in with a bachelor's plus 15 at 5 years, which is when we do the budget, which is where we always have people. In addition, benefits, again, if they take full benefits that they are eligible for. So I estimated that on the high end so that it, they could come in lower. For Huntley Middle School, we currently have a P position of 0.4. We had to add the 0.4 this past school year because of the move from Malta Elementary going to Huntley for middle school versus Rosette. As a result, we're going to get another group of kids coming from Malta to Rosette, so we need to increase that P position from 0.4 to 0.27. So that would be an increase in salary, as well as now that position is eligible for benefits under the DCTA contract. So again, I estimated that at the possible highest benefits that could come in. The ESL position at Jefferson, Amy Crook, who is not here tonight, was able to give you more specifics on to why there's that increase with that mandate. Right now we have that person in that position who's a 0.8, an increase in the salary of a 0.2 is there. There will be no addition to benefits because currently that 0.8 position is already receiving benefits within the budget. So these are the 3 increases that we have to have from mandates as well as students from the classrooms, and we have to have teachers. Any questions?
Questions for Connie? It's been recommended then. Thank you, Connie, I really appreciate you bringing back the additional work on this.
Okay. Oh, I just wanted to add one thing. We did eliminate the Tyler position because that was a position that we were projecting based on kindergarten registration. We felt it would be more appropriate for us to actually wait till we had solid numbers. So there could be the possibility that come July, August, we're going to have to come back and say, we've got to have that.
It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve an increase of 1.32 FTE of certified staff for the 2013-14 school year. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Victoria Newport. Yes. Tracy Williams.
Yes.
Colin Barnes.
Yes.
Nina Fontana. Yes. Vicki Hernandez.
Yes.
Mary Hess.
Yes.
Ramatia.
Yes. Yep, we have to hire, spend more money, chokes me out.
Me as well, Tom.
Information and possible action tonight on possible consideration for approval of additional 0.5 guidance counselor at Huntley Middle School. Doug?
Yeah.
Jessica?
Jessica.
Yep.
I'll get it right. Who? Carrie? No.
I just wanted to come back with some additional information based upon some of the questions from our last board meeting related to what do our numbers look like compared to other districts that are very comparable in size and makeup compared to DeKalb. And then also just to try and give you a better sense of what those ratios will look like for students in district in terms of counselor access if no change is made. So just very simply, currently with the projections for Huntley Middle School student numbers and then the decrease that subsequently will happen at Clinton Rosette, there will be about 100 students per counselor more at Huntley. So the addition of the 0.5 FTE would actually allow for more equitable access, and as you can see in the grid provided, we'll put Huntley between what the high school is currently serving in Rosette. When you compare that to other districts that look like ours, what was apparent is that the range is great wherever you go. So really in looking at making a move in comparison to what students in DeKalb would be experiencing.
Questions for Jessica? Discussion? Seeing none, it's been recommended that the Board of Education approve additional 0.5 guidance counseling staff at Huntley Middle School. Do I hear a motion? A motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Seeing no second? We will not bring this to a vote. Okay, thank you. Moving on to information and possible consideration for approval of additional bilingual special education teacher at Founders Elementary. Who is presenting here? Doug?
This is primarily due to increase in numbers, specifically, as you know, for special education, there's strict requirements in terms of class size. Some data that Jessica put together for this. The Founders is only in its second year. In the last 2 years, we've had just increase in 10 students in ELL services. Students eligible for special ed services have increased by 10. We also have students who are eligible for special ed and also whose native language is not English. We've gone from 10 to 17 students in the last 2 years. So basically, this is just strictly due to an increased enrollment of students that need both special ed services and for our proportion of those students as well bilingual education.
So if I read this right, it is to stay within the mandated guidelines.
For IDEA, correct.
Okay. Questions for Doug?
Yeah, Doug, this is also funded by that IDEA grant, correct?
No, I'm
By the mandate?
There is reimbursement from the physician because it will be a position where all sorts of students eligible for special education, but it will not be a grant funded position.
Well, I'm sorry, so it is reimbursed though?
It is reimbursable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions for them? Okay, it's been recommended that the Board of Education approve an additional 1.0 FTE for a bilingual special education teacher at Founders Elementary. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Vicki Hearn in favor?
Yes.
Mary Hess?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport?
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to item H, recommended revisions to school board policies. Second reading and possible approval. Any comments on any of these? Seeing none, is there a motion made to approve the revisions of school board policies? Here's a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Second.
Tracy, second. You can get the motion.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Vicki Hearn in favor?
Yes.
Mary Hess?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Tracy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item I, recommend revisions to school board policies 6, 2.35, and 7.19, second reading, possible action. Discussion? Is there a motion to approve these revisions?
So moved.
Wait a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Nina Montana.
Yes.
Vicky Vernon Favor.
Yes.
Mary Hess.
Yes.
Tom Mattia.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Tracy Williams.
Yes.
Colin Barnes.
Yes.
Motion passes. Anything else for the good of the cause, Stephen? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Scott. Gloria.
Some good info. Hey, Scott. Wait for your partner?
Good evening. How are you? Good. Mark,
I keep calling me now.
How are you?
All right.